She was photographed more than almost any human being who has ever lived. Cameras followed her into gyms, hospitals, ski resorts, and minefields. And yet the one document that mattered more than any photograph, the piece of paper that decided where her money, her jewelry, and her legacy would actually go, was written quietly, updated only once, and left to gather dust for 4 years before she died. When it was finally read aloud, it revealed something the palace never fully controlled and the public never fully understood. Diana had already decided, long before the crash in Paris, exactly who she trusted with what was left of her. This is the story of that decision, and everything it set in motion. To understand why Diana handled her estate the way she did, you have to go back to the beginning, because the way she was raised shaped the way she thought about family, loyalty, and control. She was born on the 1st of July, 1961, at Park House on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, the fourth of 5 children belonging to Viscount and Viscountess Althorpe. The family had deep, generations-old ties to the royal household. Both of her grandmothers had served as ladies-in-waiting, so in a sense, Diana grew up practically next door to the monarchy long before she married into it. But royal proximity didn't mean a stable home. Her parents had desperately wanted a son after losing an infant boy the year before Diana was born. And when she arrived, it took a full week before anyone settled on a name. The disappointment lingered in the house even as she grew. By the time Diana was 7, her parents' marriage had collapsed entirely. Custody battles followed, and her father ultimately won, leaving Diana to grow up primarily at Park House and later at Althorpe, the ancestral Spencer estate in Northamptonshire, after her father inherited the earldom in 1975. Her relationship with her stepmother, Rain, was famously difficult. Diana would later describe those years bluntly: unhappy, unstable, and lonely in a house full of people. School never came easily to her academically. She failed her O-levels twice. But teachers consistently noted something else about her: an unusual capacity for empathy, a habit of noticing when other people were struggling and quietly showing up for them. By her late teens, Diana was living an ordinary, unglamorous life in London, working as a nanny, a cleaner, and eventually a nursery school assistant, sharing a flat with roommates that her mother had bought her as a birthday gift. She had no way of knowing that within a couple of years, all of that ordinary independence would be swallowed by one of the most scrutinized marriages of the 20th century, and that the habits of self-reliance she built during those unglamorous years would matter enormously when it came time, decades later, to decide what happened to everything she owned. Diana's engagement to Prince Charles in February 1981 was framed by the press as a fairy tale, but it was, from the very beginning, a much more complicated arrangement than the public understood. The couple had spent remarkably little time together before the engagement, by some accounts barely a dozen meetings, and Charles's own history included a long, unresolved relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles that never actually ended when he married Diana. The marriage produced 2 sons, William in 1982 and Harry in 1984, and for a brief window, it appeared to work. But within 5 years, the relationship had deteriorated badly, weighed down by infidelity on both sides, mutual resentment, and the relentless pressure of public life. By 1992, the couple formally separated. The divorce was finalized in August 1996. It was during the separation, specifically in June 1993, that Diana sat down and had a formal will drawn up. This detail matters more than people realize, because it means the document that ultimately governed her estate was written during one of the most emotionally raw periods of her life, at a moment when she had every reason to think carefully about protecting her sons rather than leaving anything to chance with the royal establishment. At the time she wrote it, Diana had recently inherited a substantial sum from her father's estate, and that inheritance became the financial backbone of the will. She never went back to revise the document after her divorce settlement was finalized 3 years later. When she died suddenly in a car accident in Paris in August 1997, the will that governed her fortune was, technically, 4 years old and had never been updated to reflect her post-divorce financial position. Royal historians who later examined the document didn't mince words about its construction. It was described as plain, formulaic, and in places surprisingly unsophisticated for someone of her wealth and profile. Closer to a document you'd expect from an ordinary person of means than from one of the most famous women alive. And because Diana was, by the time of her death, no longer a working member of the royal family,